Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video, we'll be covering various methods of progressing hypertrophy training. Before getting into the programming details, we need to first establish some fundamental concepts regarding hypertrophy training. We induce hypertrophy essentially by stressing the muscles using resistance training. It is quite clear from the research that total volume is the key driver of hypertrophy, meaning that enough total work needs to be performed throughout a training program for hypertrophy to occur. However, hypertrophy can be stimulated equally well via both higher and lower repetition sets, so long as they are taken close to failure. Therefore, volume for hypertrophy training can be calculated via number of sets per muscle group, rather than the traditional sets times reps times load. A general recommendation would be to perform somewhere between 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week. Additionally, like all physical qualities, progressive overload needs to be applied for continual adaptation. Over time, we need to challenge our physiology to ensure hypertrophy occurs. So we need to either perform more reps, more sets, or more weight over time to see muscle growth. We will now cover 3 methods that can help us achieve this result. The first method is to increase the number of sets per week. Increasing the number of sets performed per week is the simplest way to achieve a volume overload. Since volume is the key driver for hypertrophy, this is a very easy and predictable method to achieve muscle hypertrophy. When referring to number of sets per week, this refers to the number of sets per muscle group per week, and this can come from a variety of exercises hitting the same muscle groups. To apply this to a program, it may look something like this. We first need to start with a base amount of volume per muscle group that will be enough to stimulate some hypertrophy. This will be variable for different muscle groups based on level of advancement and individual differences. From there, we can add 1 set per week per muscle group for the next 3 weeks in a row before going through a deload week. The deload week should have less volume than the first week of the mesocycle in order to reduce fatigue while maintaining performance. This can then be repeated for another mesocycle, although now we need to make it slightly harder than last time. So we need to add either reps or weight to the exercises, otherwise we will simply be repeating the same training program over and over. The second method is to increase reps performed per week. Increasing the number of reps performed per week is another form of progressive overload that can induce hypertrophy. This is a fairly straightforward method, although it requires some careful thought and accurate tracking to work well. We first need to make sure that we have our total weekly volume in check. Experimentation is required to find how many sets each muscle group requires per week to achieve the best sustainable muscle growth. This number of sets does not change for the entire mesocycle, except for the deload. Once this is in check, a predetermined load needs to be used, which should be equivalent to somewhere between a 6 and 20 rep max. Heavier loads may be preferred for certain muscle groups or exercises, while lighter loads may be preferred for other muscle groups or exercises. Now, the trainee can perform each set within 1 to 4 reps from failure and write down how many reps were completed each set with what weight. Week to week, the trainee can try to add 1 to 2 reps to each exercise somewhere throughout their sets. Adding small increases in reps each week can be done for 2 to 3 mesocycles in a row until a plateau is reached. Then, the load can be increased or the exercise can be changed. The same method of progression can then be applied again. The last method we will discuss today will be to increase RPE week to week. Increasing the RPE each week can be a great way to auto-regulate your training, making it more adjustable based on how you are adapting and recovering. This is a very similar approach to increasing reps as discussed previously, although it is done via going closer to failure each week. Once again, we need to establish how many weekly sets per muscle group will be trained and what load will be used for each exercise. This method requires an understanding of the rate of perceived exertion scale, or the reps in reserve scale. Quite simply, an RPE of 10 means that no more reps could have been performed, which would also be a 0 RIR. An RPE of 9 means that one more rep could have been performed before failure, which would be equivalent to a 1 RIR. An RPE of 8 means two more reps could have been performed, which would also be a 2 RIR, and so on. To apply this to a program, it may look something like this. We have our same structure of 4 weeks of overloading, then a 1 week deload. The first week, we may take each set to an RPE of 6 or an RIR of 4. The second week, we may take each set to an RPE of 7 or an RIR of 3. The third week can be taken to an RPE of 8, and the last week to an RPE of 9. Naturally, the number of reps that can be performed each week should increase because you're going closer and closer to failure. In the following mesocycle, the same process can be repeated and performance should be increased by measure of reps performed. If progress is stagnant, the load and rep range can be varied, or the exercise can be changed. It is important to record how many reps are performed at a given weight for each set throughout the program to assess if progress is actually being made over time. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.